In its heyday, with a fleet of around a dozen angling boats, Fleetwood was the major charter fishing port in the northwest of England. Then in the 1980s, and again in the 1990s, a combination of recession and the need for costly refurbishment to comply with new health and safety regulations sent the fleet into terminal decline. Despite the fact that by 1989 work had started on transforming the old commercial dock into a brand new marina, for a while there wasn't a single licensed charter boat working from the town. The good news is that Andy Bradbury has planted the town firmly back on the sea angling map, but the even better news is that the fish are still there, and in many ways the fishing is even better than it was before.
I've been operating Blue Mink since October 2003. She's a Mitchell 31 and she's licensed for 12 anglers, although she fishes more comfortably with 8. In the winter it's mainly cod and whiting, though in recent years I've also been picking up a lot of pollock out over the open ground. The summer fishing seems to start earlier these days and ends later. For example, tope are now caught mid-April, whereas years ago they used to start mid-May. Plaice and thornbacks can start showing as early as February and will often stick around until November. Then we have the bass, tope, summer cod and even a few black bream over on the offshore grounds. In 2007 I had 37 different species on the boat, so there's something to go for all year round, and weather permitting, I sail every day.
The party that had booked Blue Mink for this particular trip was a bunch of mates from British Aerospace at Wharton near Preston, and by the time I spoke to Andy for a weather update the evening before, they had already been told that the trip was on. Having studied the forecast myself, I wasn't so sure. In fact, I had at one point already decided not to bother, on the grounds that trying to film in the rain would be an absolute waste of time. I wasn't as sure as Andy in my own mind that the wind forecast was suitable either, but I allowed myself to be persuaded that there should just about be enough of a lull to call the trip on. I still wasn't totally convinced when I arrived at the marina just after 6 the following morning. Rain was dimping the marina's surface, and the sound of yacht rigging clattering on masts on the adjacent moorings didn't help that much either. On top of this, Andy had already spotted the party waiting on the ferry beach to be picked up by a ladder, instead of coming as told to the marina gate. It's as well he had spotted them, otherwise he might have abandoned the trip thinking they hadn't turned up, which in light of what was to happen would have been a crying shame. The plan had been to drift the mixed ground just to the west of Walney, with small mackerel and lugworm baits on short droppers fished above the lead, looking to pick up a variety of species including cod, whiting, pollock, gurnards, flatties, and with a bit of luck, maybe even a black bream, which are coming in ever-increasing numbers to this part of the world. But what actually happened could not have been more different. The expected fishing failed to materialise, not so much due to a lack of fish willing to take the baits, more a case of them either being beaten to it or bullied out of the way. It was Tope City down there, and they were in particularly hungry mood. Obviously, mono snoods are not going to last long when tope teeth start biting at them, though a few tope that had been hooked round the very edge of the mouth did make it onto the boat. But generally, hooks were being bitten off left, right and centre. It soon became obvious that we either fished deliberately for the tope, or a move would have to be made to avoid them. The lads on board decided they would stick with them, so the anchor was put down and a switch to flowing traces with bigger baits was made. The only problem was that wire to beat the teeth was in exceptionally short supply, as tope had not been the target the party had set themselves when they boarded the boat. Andy had a few wire traces on board which he passed around, but when they were gone, for a number of reasons ranging from hard luck to uncompromising handling, it was back to the heavy mono and the bite-offs once again.
Yeah.
Ooh! Dog shit sitting at 45.
Are you? I'm not being funny, we're all fishing with cotton today.
What are you up to?
You might get a trace back as well. Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. Try and get the trace in. Bring that back
Oh! It's a pinter, it's a pinter.
It's a
There you go. Oh, no, I don't want it. Yeah, I thought it was easy.
No, I wanted a photo up with that.
You do?
No, I don't know, I've already got a picture of them.
Bring it back.
Again, a few fish were bolted, but a great many more that should have been simply made off with the hooks. Then, out of the blue, somebody found a spool of heavy trace wire in one of the darkest reaches of a tackle box, and from that point it was most definitely game on. Everyone on board who was fishing for taupe now had wire. There were still a few tactical issues to address, such as allowing the fish to take line from the spool by setting the drag, not over-bullying the fish by aggressive thumbing of the spool, and presenting big baits so they look natural and are not masking the hook.
Okay.
Hello, Pete.
What's that?
A quick lesson in preparing and hooking up live baits and mackerel flappers was given by Andy. From there on in, it was quite literally fill your boots time. Rods were bending and fish were thrashing about on the surface everywhere around the boat. The average size was probably somewhere between 20 and 30 pounds, with the odd better fish nudging a little nearer to the 40-pound mark. One species thankfully conspicuous by the low turnout were bait-robbing dogfish. Nothing other than taupe had much of a chance of getting a sniff, unless of course you use lugworm.
Nice on top.
Go straight back with it. Yeah, that's well.
Cheers, Kit.
Ready, you?
Am I going to fish on as well?
You can in there, Mum.
Which way around want me to be?
There's a bit of a dance going on here.
Off and on throughout the day, the rain intermittently came and went. Sea conditions were also a bit up and down too. At no time did it cut up rough, but it soon became apparent that it had been a stolen day when the predicted northwesterly breeze started to show signs of coming around mid-afternoon. With a day to remember, and personal best for everyone who fished for taupe already under the belts, Andy's suggestion of heading back across the bay and having the last hour on the place in more sheltered waters closer to home met with universal approval. No fish were actually weighed, and no accurate head count was made. In many ways, there simply wasn't time for any of that. So what we did was take a personal catch tally from everyone and total it up on our way back across. That came out at around 40 fish brought into the boat, disgorged and released. But it could and should have been so many more.
Sorry, Bill. Sorry.
Just how many is difficult to say, though I think that a figure in excess of 60 and possibly even 70 could well have been on the cards. And that, in anybody's language, has to be a red letter day.